I'm going to turn the microphone over now to Dr. Chip Keister. And Chip is Chip. We got what you need there now. Chip is a psychiatrist from New Orleans area, and he is going to discuss medical emergencies in Mardi Gras today. So let me turn the mic over to N5RTF. This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta.
Well, good morning. This is N5RTF. I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana, way out in the eastern part of the city. But it's come up to my responsibility to talk about medicine with regard to Mardi Gras and Carnival. New Orleans is one of the unique cities of the United States. Mark Twain said there were only three unique cities in the country. There was New York, San Francisco, and New Orleans, and everything else was just Cleveland, which is not to disparage Cleveland, but New Orleans is very unique in its own right. It was part of France originally and brought a lot of the French culture. Before that, it was part of Spain, and some of the streets are still named in Spanish names. So there's culture from all over the world. We've been conquered at least 4 times in the last 200 years. And we just roll with it. So my history with going back with Mardi Gras goes all the way back to probably age 3. I had relatives here, aunt and uncle and 5 cousins plus their extended families. And I would come down with my parents for holidays, Christmas, and Mardi Gras was, of course, the best one of all. The parades were just magical. And that was a time in which the parades actually rode through the French Quarter. They don't do that anymore. And the beads that they threw were glass, which is rare in these days. And it was just, for a child, it was really a magical occasion. So it's stayed with me all my life. And my wife and I were lucky enough to be able to move here full time in 1999. And we participated actively in really every Mardi Gras up until COVID. And we're very involved in several crews and all of the parties and all of the events that went on. So let me talk a little bit about the history of Mardi Gras. Any discussion needs to start with the origins. Mardi Gras is essentially a springtime festival. It is already spring here in New Orleans. I'm running the air conditioner as I speak. Springtime festivals began in Egypt over 4,000 years ago, probably before that, but they didn't have written records. The dates and the deities change with time as different groups are conquered by another one, but the conquering civilizations don't throw out the holidays. They just subsume them and add their own sort of wrapper around the existing holidays. And people love their holidays. When Christianity came along, they observed 40 days of subdued behavior, sacrifice, sadness prior to Easter each year. So knowing that was coming up, there was a big festival on the day prior to Ash Wednesday, prior to the beginning of the fasting season, where they would just blow it out, eat all of their stored food and just party for several days and nights. Mardi Gras means Fat Tuesday. It always comes on the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, and it goes on for 24 hours and halts abruptly at midnight. This tradition was carried through the Roman era in the Middle Ages, was active in Italy and in France, and was brought by the French to America as carnival. So let me talk about the dates and the distinction between Mardi Gras and Carnival. Sometimes people use them interchangeably, but Carnival is a season. Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, is a single day culminating that season. The season itself begins on 12th night, or January the 6th, every year, and lasts until the midnight before our Ash Wednesday, which is in turn 40 days before Easter. Easter is calculated in the West, in the Roman era, in the Roman Catholic portion of Christianity, as the first Sunday after the first full moon on or after the vernal equinox. Now, if that's not complicated enough, you get into Eastern Orthodox, and they calculate it even differently. And then Passover, which originally coincided with Easter, has its own calculations based on a lunar calendar, and it moves around so that it's very rare that the two coincide. In the Eastern Orthodox tradition, they deliberately move it so it can't coincide with Passover. But in the West, it can. So anyway, that's I guess enough about the dates. But what it means is that
Let's take a break just for ID purposes.
Sure.
This is the Medical Amateur Radio Council Grand Rounds on the Internet. And this we hold our net every Sunday at this time, at the top of the hour, here at 11 o'clock Eastern. Before we move on with Chip, as we have our discussion, our interactive discussion about Mardi Gras and Carnival, I'm going to ask, is there anybody that has been to Mardi Gras? No, I have not been. So I'm really looking forward to this presentation. If you've been to Mardi Gras, can you please go ahead and let us know? I'm listening on 20 meters. Okay, well, this is going to be very informative today in 5RTF, because it seems that none of the amateurs here on the radio waves have been to Mardi Gras. I'm sure a lot of the public that watches this video that we're producing have. But this is going to be a whole different twist on it. So let me turn the mic back to you, N5RTF, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta.
Okay, and I would encourage people to look it up on YouTube and watch some of the parades and watch some of the parties and the balls and all. They are really amazing. Endymion, for example, goes on for probably 6 to 8 hours and culminates in a ball in the Superdome, and they literally fill up the floor of the Superdome with floats, and everyone is in tux and gowns, and they're throwing beads and they're partying way into the night. So it's really an impressive event. So anyway, the date of Easter moves, so Mardi Gras moves, and it can fall on any Tuesday from February the 3rd to March the 9th. Okay, this year it falls on March the 4th, which makes it a relatively late Mardi Gras. And the carnival season this year is 8 weeks long. Minimum it would be 4, and maximum would be 9. So we're getting on up there this year. At some point, some people get exhausted at the end of 2 months of partying. Other people take it as a challenge. So logistically, the city has been hosting Mardi Gras for well over 100 years, probably 150 years. There are definite financial advantages. A lot of money rolls in during the carnival season, but the city also has to meet some logistical challenges that other cities don't have to. The population of the metro area literally doubles in the last weeks of carnival. All of the hotels fill up, all of the bed and breakfasts fill up. Everybody that has a relative down here stays with their relative, and the roads get clogged. There are shortages of different services. The trash pickup suffers, and police services are called on with increasing frequency. Remarkably, most people are well behaved, and there are not that many real serious problems because most people are just having fun. There are parades beginning about 2.5 weeks prior to Mardi Gras itself, every day and night in different areas. When they occur, they slow traffic for hours, including blocking deliveries to those locations and businesses. Sometimes floats will break down. They're literally only used once a year. So you end up with flat tires and broken axles and all kinds of problems that you get with things that are relatively rarely used. And even the police, fire, and ambulance services have a hard time getting to some areas when there are parades completely encircling an area like in the Garden District. There are some hospitals and clinics in the Garden District that can't be reached for hours at a time. So if if you're having a baby, you don't want to be in the middle of a parade. Banks are closed. Now, before COVID, this was a real issue. They had banks that would buy New Orleans banks, and they would look at the holiday list and says, well, why are you closed on Mardi Gras? He said, well, we always closed on Mardi Gras. And they said, well, no, you don't, we don't, you have to keep the same hours as the rest of the branches all over the country. And they said, well, think about it for a second. Do you really want your bank full of people wearing masks? And they closed. Plus, you can't get there. So this talk is really about medicine. I never had an opportunity I did practice as a general practitioner and an ER doc when I was much younger, but never in New Orleans. So I never actually worked in an emergency room. I was in emergency rooms seeing psychiatric patients during Mardi Gras. So I could certainly talk about that. But the medical issues really began with just the most basic things, the weather. Remember, carnival dates change. Spring usually comes early in New Orleans, but there are times, like 3 weeks ago, we had a blizzard. Other years, you have, you're wearing t-shirts and shorts and sweating. Visitors sometimes arrive for carnival poorly dressed for the current conditions, are not aware that they can change, that the conditions can change quickly. And I've seen people with both, suffering from both hypothermia and hyperthermia during past carnivals. Stamina becomes an issue, especially when you're talking about a 9-week party. Parking is difficult. So people have to park a long way away and carry everything that they're going to need, such as ladders, ice chests, small children. If you're not in shape, this can be, really, really rough. I know that Terry lived down here in the 80s, and she and some friends would start uptown, and they would walk 4 miles carrying ice chests to get to the French Quarter, and then back again in the evening. People routinely do that kind of thing. Some people follow the parades. They'll actually walk behind the last float of the parade and just sort of reel in all of the activity that's still there just to catch that spirit. So physically, it's very, very demanding. There are walking crews, and everybody thinks of floats and riders, but there are people that are in walking crews, and they all have themes. Some of them dance and dance nonstop for 5 miles. The flambeau carriers walk. More about that later. And that's in any kind of weather. It can be pouring down rain, it can be cold, it can be hot. They do have water available. And on rare occasions, they will have a trailer with a porta potty, but often there are no bathrooms at all. So that's another big issue.
A break for ID here. This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta operating out of Hawthorne, Florida today. AA4FL's QTH, and Jay at the mic right now. Our presenter, Zen5RTF, is having, actually, it's an interactive discussion on Mardi Gras and medical emergencies. And at this time, I'd like to pause. I'm going to ask a question of N5RTF, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. So we were talking about ladders, and why would people bring ladders to Mardi Gras? And is it a problem in addition to the medical emergencies from carrying them? Are there other aspects of that are problematic? N5RTF, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta.
At the major parades, the ones that are known for throwing lots of beads and lots of specialized items, a real challenge is getting close enough to the floats to be noticed by the riders so that they'll throw things directly to you rather than just throwing stuff up in the air and you hoping that you're where it falls. Especially for small children, they can get trampled very easily in a crowd full of intoxicated adults. So people started, especially in the Uptown Garden District area, bringing ladders with little seats attached at the top. Now, these are not for adults. These are for children. I can remember as a small child sitting on one of those ladders on Canal Street, watching the Rex parade and the truck parades, along with my cousin, who was just a few months younger than me. And we were sitting there catching beads on the ladder. Now, even a child knows if you lean too far, it's going to tip over. So you have to be very, very careful. Occasionally, the legs will be unsteady. Somebody will bump into them. Occasionally, they'll fall over. Occasionally, a child will fall off. Anytime you have something like this, things can happen to it. So it's just another feature of Mardi Gras that looks like, why in heaven's name would anybody ever do that? And there's lots of those moments.
One other question before I turn it over for others to ask. You mentioned the word cruise. From memory, I think it's KREWES. I don't know the origin of the word. Could you please explain what crews are and if they are an organization, how many and how they're structured? N5RTF.
Yeah, the term crew came to New Orleans from the original celebrations in Mobile. And crews were the clubs that put on the parades and the parties and the balls. And of course, it has gotten more and more sophisticated and expensive. Some crews are open to anybody. Some are by invitation only. Some are so secretive that nobody even knows who the king is. It's unless you're a member, you don't even know who that is up there in the front wearing a mask. They are the social life of New Orleans, whereas other cities might have a society page with people going to arts fairs or symphonies or ballets or other social events. In New Orleans, everything is around the carnival, all the carnival crews. That's one of the first things that you're asked if you're in New Orleans is whether you're a member of a crew. And at one point, Terry was a member of two at the same time and she rode in two parades that were only 2 days apart. And that's getting out into, my discussion of stamina.
Okay, well, thank you for the explanation. I've been to the Mobile Mardi Gras once. I thought it was a little different because from what I remember, it was for the children and they threw moon pies. That, in addition to other things, but a little less beads and more moon pies from what I remember. On 20 meters here, do we have anyone that would like to ask a question? Make your call to WB5D and we'll add you to the list and direct you to N5RTF.
Kilo Echo 2, Bravo Alpha Victory.
Okay, Kilo Echo 2, Bravo, please give me the rest of your call.
BAB, Bravo Alpha Victory.
Okay, Bravo Alpha Victory. Thanks for coming by. Please proceed, and if you have a question of N5 RTF, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm new to the hobby HF. I just got my extra in April of 24. I just want to know right now, I'm working with a 20-meter cam stick. I'm in an HOA complex, so I'm just trying to find an antenna that I can work with, take it up and take it down.
Well, you know, you're 5x7 here, actually, 5x7, and we'll finish up the net at the top of the hour at about 12 Eastern, and we'll be glad to meet with you and discuss that. QSL?
We're coming in like a 5'9", and I'm reaching you guys pretty okay.
Yes, you're 5x7, and thank you for checking in into the net. And we'll talk about the antennas with you at the top of the hour. Right now, we'd like some questions of our presenters, having an interactive discussion on Mardi Gras. So not to minimize, and congratulations, welcome to the hobby. We look forward to being there for you. But right now, do we have any questions from 20 meters regarding Mardi Gras? Direct your call to Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta, and we'll give you the mic with N5 RTF. Okay, no further questions here. I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to N5 RTF to continue our forum, our discussion about Mardi Gras. Go ahead.
Okay, so, walking 5 miles is tough, particularly in a costume carrying stuff. People think, well, riding must be much, much better. Yes, people who ride on floats and horses have some advantages, but they also have issues as well. You would think that if you paid $50,000 to $100,000 to be king of a carnival crew, you might have access to a bathroom, but they don't. Particularly the king, queen, dukes, maids. I know in Endymion it's not bragged about, but it's common knowledge that the costumes of the maids, who are so elaborate and so heavy that they are held up by metal rods, so they're literally pinned in place like butterflies, and they the big heavy ball gowns that go all the way to the floor. They are standing over a bucket of cat litter, so that they can actually urinate in the cat litter while they're up there riding 5 or 6 miles and for 5 or 6 hours on an Endymion float. Other people are not as lucky. Now, the main crew floats themselves usually have bathrooms. For the people out on the parade routes, sometimes there are porta potties, sometimes there are not. I hate to talk so much about bathrooms, but after a few hours, that becomes a very important issue and dictates a lot of people's behavior as to where they watch the floats from. The costumes are heavy and they're hot. The one in the last of this picture set, if you're looking on YouTube, or if you're looking at our one of our archives, is my wife and I in a float. In a ball, wearing costumes that weighed 30 pounds apiece. And if you can imagine standing on a float in that costume like that on a hot day for hours and hours and hours, you're just soaked in sweat by the end of the ride. Plus, you're trying to bend over, pick up beads, throw beads, move around on a moving float. The floats are unsteady. They sway like a boat, particularly if you're on the upper story. Some of them are 2, some of them are even 3 stories tall. your arms get tired, your legs get tired, and some people are so sore they can barely move the next day. So it's physically demanding, and the older you get, the harder it is. And so unless you are in the court or in the an officer and have your own special float, most people at some point in their life, they just say, I'm too old for this, and they turn it over to younger people. Moving on to diet. Unless you're on a float, the only thing you have to eat is what you've carried with you. There are street vendors selling fair food, which is mostly just fried, greasy stuff, dubious quality. None of it's healthy. So it's you're not eating well, at least for one day, and sometimes for several days in a row. And people sometimes feel the effects of that. Almost everybody, though, loses weight just from the physical work and walking and exercise. Fluids are very important. Everybody, that thinks about Carnival and Mardi Gras, they think about alcohol. But if you're a participant, you have to carefully balance the weight of what you're carrying to drink. I mean, if you're gonna carry alcohol with you, you probably want to carry, whiskey or vodka or something like that, and mix it where you get there. You don't want to be carrying a heavy case of beer and a chest full of ice if you're going to walk behind a parade. It's just not practical. So a lot of times people's drinking is limited by what they can actually carry. Also, there is a significant problem, as I said, with bathrooms. Unless you have access to a bathroom, you don't want to do a lot of drinking. You want to be sure that you can get to a bathroom fast if you're gonna have a lot to drink. So all of that comes into account. There are review stands and balconies that can be rented if you've got the money. The best ones obviously cost the most, but they have bathrooms, they have food, they have some of them have bars, and all have water. So if you can afford it, that's definitely the way to go. You do miss out on some of the fun, but as you get older, it's been there, done that. I think I'll just go for comfort this time. Sometimes people miscalculate and have accidents. It used to be said that the only thing you could get arrested for during Mardi Gras was peeing on the street, and truthfully, that's one of the few things that people would get taken off to jail for. You can add that to carrying glass on the street. You cannot carry any kind of glass, drinking glass, bottle, anything like that, because the glass is dangerous. People get cut. And then the last thing is, once the parade starts, you can't cross the street. That's both a safety issue and just pure courtesy for the parade. They don't want people running through the marching bands and things like that. So those are the three things that will definitely get you arrested and get you taken to jail. And the courts are closed until Ash Wednesday. So you don't even get a hearing until Mardi Gras is completely over. You do not want to get arrested at Mardi Gras.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and break here for ID.
Sure.
Medical Amateur Radio Council Grant Rounds on the air net here. N5RTF is leading our interactive forum discussion, and we appreciate his involvement. He's presented programs on other subjects as well. He's a regular contributor, and you're welcome as a listener if you have something you'd like to discuss on our net or interact with those on 20 meters and get questions and answers from them. Let me know. You can look me up on QRZ AA4F Alpha 4 Foxtrot Lima. My email address is listed there. So this is WB5D Medical Amateur Radio Council Grounds and Air Net, taking place from Hawthorne, Florida today. Do we have any late check-ins at this time? Make your call at this time. Okay, Whiskey 3, Golf Whiskey Mike. Thank you for checking into our net. George, do you have any questions about the discussion we're having today of N5RTF? Go ahead. Well, here in Florida, you're 5 by 7, 57. Over. Okay, thank you very much, George. You're up to 5 by 8 right now. For those of you that are listening on YouTube, we the Medical Amateur Radio Council is a group of amateur radio operators. So this discussion that you're seeing on video, you're finding a lot of information out about a medically related topic, but you're doing it actually through amateur radio. This is a broadcast on the public airwaves for those individuals that are licensed to operate amateur radio stations, those that have an interest in healthcare, and this is an amateur radio net. If you're interested in amateur radio, have questions about getting licensed, feel free to email me. You can find our information on healthcarehams.org on our website, healthcarehams.org, and you can write us that way. And we appreciate all the amateurs that are participating today, those that are letting us have a clear frequency to have these interactive discussions, these forums that we have every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern for the past many years. That being known, and we encourage everyone to check in and ask questions. Are there any further check-ins? Make your call to Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta.
N4 BPV.
N4, is it Bravo Tango Bravo? Is that correct?
That's affirmative. November 4 Bravo Tango Bravo. Bill, Marietta, Georgia.
All right, Bill. Thank you for joining us today. Do you have any questions?
No, just been listening in and enjoying new information.
Okay, well, I think you're going to find even the rest of it just as fascinating or more fascinating. I have had the pleasure of visiting the CHEP N5RTF, who is leading the discussion here today, but I have never done for Mardi Gras. So I'm going to have to correct that ill someday. I'm just missing it. I'm headed to Chip's house right after Mardi Gras this year. So any other further check-ins? This is open to all amateurs. Make your call.
Norway 4 Tango Sugar Charlie.
No, Norway 4 Tango Sugar Charlie. Good morning, Jerry. You have a beautiful signal here today. Any further check-ins? Okay, no further check-ins at this time. We're going to go back to our forum, our discussion for today's net, being led by N5RTF. Go ahead, Chip.
Okay, just a little bit more about the fluids and alcohol. Some people who know they're going to be on floats for long periods of time will actually dehydrate themselves with salt. They will drink salty concoctions, or they will eat Fritos. As you know, that can have problems with blood pressure, and people are risking strokes when they do that. Hangovers are very common, and some inventive people actually set up clinics with IVs, oxygen, and orange juice for people during Carnival to go and get rehydrated and keep right on partying. Sleep. Some of the parades began very early in the morning. When Terry and I were in Iris, when we were riding as Duke and Maid in Iris, the makeup call was at 5 o'clock in the morning down in Kenner. So you're basically up at 2 or 3 and you're going all day long. So you lose sleep. And for people that are involved in multiple parades, multiple balls and things, they go for long periods of time without sleep with the obvious physical problems that come from that. Accidents happen, particularly when you're doing crazy stuff. despite the best of intentions, remember that we've had Mardi Gras parades for over 150 years. There are floats in some crews like Proteus that are nearly 100 years old. I've seen those floats myself for over 60 years, rolling on old metal wagon wheels. They were originally pulled by mules, and now they roll behind tractors. A modern float is the size of a moving van, 2 stories high, with 40 or 50 riders in each, and sometimes you'll have 1, 2, 3 of these tied together in a long train pulled by a single very large tractor. The tractor driver really can't see what's happening behind the first float, so they're just sort of relying on the feedback from just the motion of the pull. The floats have no brakes. Okay, 20,000 pounds, no brakes. This is why you can only have Mardi Gras style parades in cities that have long stretches of completely flat roadways. New Orleans is a flat city. There's no place with more than a 2-degree grade in the entire city, except for the bridges. If you had anything more than that and something went wrong, a runaway float would be devastating. Try to imagine one of these things in San Francisco. That would make a great disaster movie. Accidents, I mentioned the ladders and possibility of them turning over. People can get hit with throws. People throw not just beads, they throw bags of beads. Zulu throws coconuts, although in recent years they've been handing them out instead of throwing them. Muses throw shoes. Another crew throws purses. Whenever something's thrown, somebody can get hit. They can get hurt. So they're very careful about that. Some people get angry and throw things back at the riders because they didn't get what they wanted, and they can injure the riders. Wearing masks decreases your peripheral vision and makes it more likely that you're going to get hit by something. Horses are part of every parade, and they're also ridden by the police as crowd control. People born in the city don't know how to handle horses. They don't know how to approach them, and they'll come up on them from the rear. They will try to pet them. They'll try to distract them, and sometimes things go bad with the horses. And if you mess with the police horse, just again, that's one of the ways you can go to jail. Flambeaux deserve a page all their own. Okay, before electricity, the night parades were lit by street lights, which were gas, and then they had these flambeaux poles. At the top of the pole was an open top bucket of gasoline with a hose running down to a contraption with multiple burners. The gasoline would drop by gravity into the burners. The burners would be set on fire, and behind the burners was a reflective piece of metal, tin or something, so that you could focus the light in one direction. You would have dozens of these flambeaux marching with the night parades to light them up before they had electricity. They became so popular that they still happen today. Now, today, they've substituted propane for the gasoline. But these people, they're not just walking, they're dancing. They are twirling around. And people throw money. And they reach down, stoop down, and pick up the money that's thrown, all the while carrying this fire over their heads. You can imagine what might possibly go wrong with this kind of arrangement. On the other hand, everybody loved it so much, there's never been an attempt to stop it. So just more Mardi Gras fun. Violence, unfortunately, does occur. It's relatively rare considering the more than 1 million people that you're dealing with. But I personally know 2 people, one a friend, one a family member, who survived being shot at parades. It can happen to anybody, but the locals pretty much know where to go, where are the safe spots to view a parade, where are the unsafe spots, which ones to go to, which ones not to go to. And they're more than glad to share that information if the tourists want to ask them. And then finally, personal note, I said before, I've been a psychiatrist the whole time I've been in New Orleans. So from my perspective, practicing during carnival season, I sometimes took, my rotation, my share of call during the days and hours before carnival and on Mardi Gras Day occasionally. While the ER in general was busy taking care of people who were intoxicated or in accidents, the psychiatric workload actually went down. The standing joke in our department was that Mardi Gras was the lightest day of the year for a psychiatrist because the usual reasons for people being brought in for a mental health evaluation, such as intoxication, public nudity, bizarre behavior, were just a normal thing. So they were just ignored. There was very little that could actually identify somebody as mentally ill on Mardi Gras Day. I also don't think I ever saw a suicidal patient on Mardi Gras. This is not to lighten the terrible effects of suicide, but there's always an element of attention seeking, and people literally would not notice if you killed yourself on Mardi Gras in New Orleans. Nobody would notice until the next day. So I think it would just the embarrassment of that would keep anybody from doing it. Plus, I have to say, people are having a good time. It's the one day of the year where, even more than Christmas, where people are just out having a good time. Everybody has a holiday. Everything's closed, and it's just a day off for us. Whereas one of the common statements is, in the rest of America, it's just Tuesday. And for those that are watching this on Zoom, that's a picture of myself and Terry, Maid and Duke of Iris, in the year after Katrina. And those were heavy costumes, but it was fun. And everybody had a good time at the balls. Everybody had a good time at the parades. So what questions do people have? Again, this is N5RTF.
Okay, I'm going to be moderator for this portion here. This is AA4FL. I do have some questions that I'd like to have some participation for our panel. We have a lot of expertise here, Chip, and within Marco. I can see where these are stressors that result in emergencies and things that may have been underlying issues, and the types of issues in Mardi Gras. I mean, we think about the heat and the other things you described. I can think about college football games and in the fall having very similar components. I imagine that they're a little different up where Harry is, W1HMM up in Durham, but he probably can think of situations with stressors, and I'm sure Monair can think about people that may have not been aware they had an underlying neurological condition where they ran into an emergency. So the question first for Harry, if you can come in with audio, being that you're in emergency services, what type of emergencies do you see that are related to stressors where people get into emergencies that maybe they weren't aware of a situation and something put them over the edge where it became a clinical emergency? You'd unmute Harry and answer that. Go ahead.
Well, I think a lot of the emergencies that we'll see from the EMS standpoint are the same ones that Chip was talking about. You know, people overdoing it, not being aware of what their physical and mental limitations are. There is also a significant amount of stress at times like this on emergency services, not because, well, because the system is stressed, and many people in emergency services are very dedicated and take it personally when it's very stressful when they can't meet the demands that the public is placing on them. You know, we don't have anything in New Hampshire that even comes close to Mardi Gras or Gasparilla down in Tampa. But a lot of the smaller events that we do have, we see the similar kinds of injuries and illnesses. So it's hard. It's very hard. You know, I don't have anything oh, sorry, long morning. Anything else to add, but you know, I feel bad for my colleagues both in EMS and in the hospitals, because I think it's just a very, very stressful time, and it puts a lot of stress on the medical system in general.
Thank you for your input, Harry, from an EMS perspective. Now, many of our members and many hams in general, including those listening on the public airwaves in 20 meters today, are involved in the EMS system, I mean, paramedic, et cetera. And for those of you that are first responders, thank you for what you do. And this situation with Mardi Gras, where a stressor is introduced and an emergency arises, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be to the extreme. So the question I have from Manair, N3PQ, being a neurologist, can you see situations where somebody had a condition they were not aware of, and then a stress like this led to a diagnosis? That's the first part of the question. The other part of the question is it beneficial in a way in that case, because if they don't have a life-threatening injury or a life-threatening issue, they become alerted or aware that they had an underlying condition. Let me turn it to M3PQ. This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. If you could unmute there.
Thank you, Jay. This is M3PQ. From what Chip described very, very well with the conditions in Mardi Gras, I would say just about any neurological condition can be made worse or at least uncovered in a situation such as Mardi Gras. To add to the ones that Chip mentioned, like stroke and of course the high blood pressure, I mean, if you think of the dehydration, and if you think of the after effects of alcohol, specifically alcohol withdrawal, I mean, that would include seizures, among other things, in addition to alcohol withdrawal, all kind of side effects from that. That's one thing I would like to add, but probably seizures. I haven't been in a situation where I treated patients from a large crowd like that. I must say, I've been to New Orleans 2 or 3 times. Wonderful, wonderful city, very unique. The French Quarter, the Café du Monde, some of the best bread pudding in the world, that's for sure. But that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you for your input. N3PQ. I'm going to open up to 20 meters here. Is there anybody that would like to ask a question of N5RTF or make a comment of a situation where you've known somebody that overexerted themselves and got into an emergency where they were trying to have a good time and had unintended outcomes? Make your call to Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. No, we're not hearing anything on 20 meters right now. Any questions on this interactive discussion and forum? And we do appreciate having the expertise of the members of the Medical Amateur Radio Council on frequency here during our net. You tell us eminently interesting subject material, very typical. Now we're a group of individuals, many are Renaissance men and women, and they're multi-talented. And their interests are across the spectrum. So just like everybody else in the population, amateur radios operators are not ubiquitous. We come from all walks of life and we all have something to offer. So don't ever hesitate to offer your input here. So since everybody is so loquacious on the microphone, I'm going to go ahead and give one more opportunity for 20 meter. operators to say something or ask questions, make your call to WB5D. Well, I think our speaker did such an excellent job, our discussion forum leader. Thank you very much, Chip, N5RTF. You've answered all the questions proactively there. So I'm looking forward to coming visiting you in the near future and arranging for a time to be in town for Mardi Gras. And I think you mentioned that family and friends come and visit at that time of the year. We got a hotel, one or the other, or all of the above. It's a popular time. I think you mentioned the metro area doubles inside during Mardi Gras. That's a pretty significant event. Would you like to say something more, N5RTF? Go ahead.
Yeah, the actual figures, the New Orleans itself only has about 500,000 people. The metro area, which includes Metairie and some surrounding communities, is closer to 1 million. The number of people who come from outside of this area to Carnival, now again, Carnival can stretch over 9 weeks, but the number of visitors who come every year is over 1 million. So the metro area doubles. If you were talking about just the city of New Orleans itself, then you would be talking about it would triple. Fortunately, we have lots of hotels, more probably per capita than any place in the country. And we have restaurants, we have lots of businesses that are more than welcome to take care of visitors any time of year. But the fact that they can do it effectively during Mardi Gras is really a testament to the skill and the practice that they've had over many, many years.
Chip, what time is it best to visit as far as weather is concerned? Not too hot, not too cold?
Mardi Gras New Orleans has two good weeks a year, but they happen at different times. So I'm not sure when I could tell you, you just have to hit it right. Usually the spring, probably early April is about the best time of year, or in the fall. October is usually very comfortable and dry. Both of those are good times of year. There's generally no hurricanes during those periods, although you can get them occasionally in October. But that's when most people are most comfortable here. Never come during the late summer, July, August, September. Do not come to New Orleans. Best case, you'll have to stay indoors the entire time just because of the heat. Worst case, you'll get caught in the major hurricane.
Thank you, N5RTF with N3PQ. This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta operating out of Hawthorne, Florida today. My call is AA4FL. Now, I've had the benefit of hearing N5RTF speak about Katrina, being a psychiatrist, and after Katrina, of course, he had to deal with all the psychiatric conditions and those stresses, and perhaps we can get a discussion on another day on another net about that. He was a speaker at annual meeting, the Medical Image Radio Council. And I believe you mentioned one of the balls you went to in 2006 after Katrina, and it must have been an amazing relief a year removed from the hurricane, and everybody must have been quite celebratory. And if I remember correctly, maybe I'm incorrect, didn't the Saints win the Super Bowl that year after Katrina as well? I think. Well, if those are listening, you can.
No, the Saints won in 2009.
2009. Okay, it was not too far after.
But yeah, it was a real morale booster to the city to have Mardi Gras, and that Mardi Gras season started 4 months after Katrina. So it had just happened really in people hadn't even finished cleaning up. There were still blue tarps on the roofs and everything else, but they still geared up and had Mardi Gras. So one interesting thing is that we had so much problems with FEMA. Everybody was angry at FEMA, so that people will dress up on Mardi Gras Day in the French Quarter with interesting themes and all that. But somebody dressed up on Ash Wednesday, the day after Mardi Gras was over, as the crew of FEMA, giving out vouchers for beads instead of real beads.
That's a funny story. I just happened to look to see what parades were going on, and there are a few that occur after Mardi Gras. I saw one that was for raising money for pets.
Yeah, well, they really frown on any carnival activity after midnight. One impressive sight, if you ever get the opportunity, is to be down on Bourbon Street at midnight on Mardi Gras Day, and the police come down. They start on Canal Street and push the crowds into the bars and the buildings and up the side streets with 2 rows of gigantic horses, followed by police cars, followed by walking police, followed by fire trucks with their lights and sirens going. And at midnight, literally at midnight, you are shoved off the street, and finally the street sweepers come in and with a high pressure hose clear all the junk and beads and everything off of the streets. And you don't want to be there when that happens.
Yeah, I guess they have a lot of kitty litter to clean up too as well.
They got a lot. They've got a lot to clean up. The rats feast for months afterwards.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to bring the net to a close here today. Thank you for everybody that's participated in this presentation discussion, I should say, interactive discussion about Mardi Gras on the 20-meter airwaves. And thank you for checking in and participating and asking questions. And for just a moment here, we are going to turn this back to the general public, for general amateur public for use. And again, thank you for your participation. This is AA4FL, the mic for the Medical Amateur Radio Council Grand Rounds on the Air. This is something that we do every week, and